22 November Network and Neapolis Media Group proudly present to you the Lone Gunman Podcast with your host, Rob Clark, your boy. That's right. Stay tuned. I'll be right there. What's up, everybody? This is your boy Rob Clark on the Lone Gunman Podcast, episode number 60. Now, I don't know when I started doing this thing, but it was roughly a year ago, and I'd like to call this my 1-year anniversary show. It's been a year since we've been doing this, and I can't believe I'm still doing this, but here I am, and hopefully it'll keep going for a while. Today on the show, I have a very special guest returning, Mr. Charles Cliff. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Rob. Thanks for having me back on. I'm honored. I'm on the anniversary show. How awesome.
Hey, I wouldn't have it any other way. The last time you were on, I mean, it's almost up to 500 listens, so hey, yeah, that was one of my most listened to shows in the past 6 months.
Wow.
They love you.
Must have somewhat liked what I was talking about. So
oh, yeah.
I guess I'm doing something right.
That's right. And I couldn't think of anybody better that I'd like to talk to about what we're going to be discussing today. And that is a little bit of Madeline Brown, a little bit of LBJ, and a little bit of George Bush. We're going to try to dispel some of these nonsensical Fetzer-fueled myths out there.
Well, there's no shortage of them.
Ain't that the truth? And just for reference to what we're going to be referring to today, I'm going to post a link up on the website, tlgpodcast.com, where everybody can go listen to this show that Jim Fetzer did. You can listen to it for yourself. And it's basically a 1 hour diatribe and then an hour from the men who killed Kennedy, but I'm not even worried about the second hour of that. We're just going to be addressing a lot of the points that he brought up in the first hour regarding LBJ and how credible Madeline Brown is, and some elements relating to George Bush being in Dealey Plaza. But we'll get into that, I promise. So, Charles, did you do your homework and listen to the show?
I suffered my way through it.
As did I. It was rough.
Pretty bad.
I know. It's that show is hard to listen to. You know, especially, you know, when you get so frustrated, you just want to scream out, but nobody's listening, nobody can hear you, you know.
Yeah. But that's okay. I've heard of a couple of his other podcasts, and I had the same reaction to those ones, too.
Oh, yeah. That's just about all of them for me.
Yeah.
So, this show, okay, it basically starts out, and it goes two ways with Fetzer. He's a big proponent of the Phil Nelson camp, that LBJ was the mastermind behind the assassination. Okay, but in this one, he points out that you have sponsors, facilitators, and mechanics. Okay, now among the sponsors that he mentions in this are Israel, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the CIA, the oil men, the mafia, and the bankers. Okay? Now, granted, I do agree that all these people probably had a reason to want Kennedy out of office or dead. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think once he did die, all of those groups all benefited.
Oh, they sure did.
I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah, I mean, Israel, you know, I don't think Kennedy wanted Israel to have nuclear power. And after he died, they did. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, of course, were mad because Kennedy wouldn't listen to them when it came to wanting to go to war. And, of course, the CIA was pissed because Kennedy had fired Dulles and threatened to smash him into a million pieces and scatter him to the wind. And, of course, the oil men were pissed because of the oil depletion tax. And, of course, the mafia was pissed because Bobby Kennedy was going after him. And then you have the bankers who control everything. So, I would tend to agree with all those people. Now, not that they were all sponsors of the assassination now, but that they all would have wanted or benefited from Kennedy's death.
Yeah. And I think it's clear that they would have. But to make that leap and say, well, because of that, they were all sponsors, that's kind of a leap of faith, really, with no real, nothing really to back it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a giant supposition, to accuse, basically the Joint Chiefs of Staff for committing treason, the CIA. I mean, now a lot of these people, I do agree, may have been part of the plot. You can't discount the CIA, of course. You can't discount the mafia, with the New Orleans ties and Jack Ruby. But let's take a closer look now at what he calls the facilitators. These are the people that he says made it possible for this assassination to take place. Okay, we've got LBJ, we've got Hoover, we've got the Dallas Police Department, the Secret Service, Cliff Carter, and D.H. Byrd. Let's start with Lyndon as a facilitator. And he says that, since the assassination took place in Texas, Lyndon's home state, that he provided basically the motorcade route through Cliff Carter, the assassination sniper nest, via D.H. Byrd, who owned in the Texas School Book Depository and who had started the Civil Air Patrol, and basically controlled things in Texas.
Well, to me, the whole Texas angle would tend to point away from Lyndon Johnson. Now, you got to use a little bit of critical thinking here and common sense. Lyndon Johnson's the vice president. If he is going, let's say he did want to get rid of Kennedy, he wanted to have Kennedy assassinated and take over power. Why would he do it in the state of Texas, his home state, where automatically, once it happens in Texas, people are going to look to him because he's from Texas?
Yeah.
Why are you going to do that? He could pick anywhere in the world, basically, to do it. But he's going to do it in his home state that would provide a link to him? That doesn't make any sense to me. He's got ample opportunity to do it anywhere else. But he's going to do it in his home state. Not only do it in his home state, he's going to do it when he's putting himself directly in the line of fire. You got to remember, Johnson's only 2 cars behind Kennedy. If one of the bullets that get fired accidentally slips, it hits something, it ricochets, it could be going directly at him. Not only him, but his wife, who's seated in the car with him. It just doesn't make any sense to do it that way. If he wanted to do it, he would do it, when he's in the shadows, when he's somewhere else, when he's not anywhere close to Kennedy. He's not going to do it where he's putting himself in the line of fire in a state that's going to link directly back to him. That's just not, to me, that just doesn't, it's just nonsensical. It doesn't make sense.
No. And that's something I always had a problem with. Why would he choose to do it in broad daylight in front of hundreds of people who I'm sure are filming and taking pictures of the event at high noon in his home state? Like you said, it makes no sense whatsoever. If he wanted Kennedy dead, it takes him with a plan and one assassin to pull it off. I mean, back in 1963, I mean, they didn't have the technological advances that we do now as far as security and all that stuff. I mean, they could have got to Kennedy pretty much anytime they wanted to, really.
Yeah, I mean, he was an insider in the White House. I mean, it's not like he had to really pass security clearance and so on. There are so many other ways he could have done it that would have been much more logical and would have left far fewer links to him than to do it in his home state when he's riding two cars. I can't see him doing something that stupid.
Right, not to mention his good buddy, his best friend, actually, John Connolly, riding right in front of JFK.
They were longtime friends, so he's going to have bullets fired into the car at Kennedy when his old friend Connolly is sitting less than 3 feet in front of him, and is literally within the target. He must be the most strange, weirded out person to come up with a plot like that. If he's the one that planned it, doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, they could have hit him any time, really. I mean, all you would need is a sniper, located somewhere. I mean, they could have hit him in Houston or, anywhere in Chicago or, Florida, wherever he was. I mean, they could have hit him in the Rose Garden, from a rooftop nearby in D.C. with a sniper rifle.
I mean, not somewhere that directly links to Lyndon Johnson. I mean, in his home state. And because he would have had to have known that if he had done that and done it in Texas, general suspicion would have gone to him, being that he was from Texas. There were editorials written in foreign countries. In fact, I believe on the night of the assassination, there was an editorial guy in Russia who did a radio editorial suggesting that because it had happened in Texas, Johnson should be the one suspected, being that he was from Texas.
Right. So
this goes back to what I'm saying. It's an obvious link right to him that he wouldn't have to do.
Yep. And, all right, well, next we got J. Edgar Hoover as a facilitator. Now, with Hoover, I don't know how much of a facilitator he would have been beforehand. I know that there was a telex sent out, I think it was on the 17th, of a credible threat to assassinate Kennedy in Dallas that they did not act on, didn't let local authorities know. I don't even know if they let the Secret Service know. But definitely, I would say Hoover aided in the cover-up investigation.
Oh, absolutely he did. And Hoover didn't like the Kennedys. He didn't like JFK, and he didn't like Bobby. In fact, I believe he once referred to Bobby as a snot-nosed punk or something like that. And he didn't like the Kennedys. In fact, he hated the Kennedys. And could he have had prior knowledge that there was a plan in place to kill Kennedy? That wouldn't surprise me at all. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he knew about it and did nothing. I don't have any evidence for that. I don't think he would have shed too many tears when it happened. But as a facilitator, I mean, still, you got to remember, these guys that planned it, they would want, anyone who planned this assassination, they would want guys like Hoover, and they would want guys like Johnson to really have not much knowledge of it all. They just say, you know what, whatever happens, just go with it. And they would want those guys to have plausible deniability. So, could he have known about it in advance? Possibly. Could he have just, kept his mouth shut? Possibly. But I don't know about the how much of a facilitator and how much in on the pre-planning he would have been.
Right, and then you also have the little problem. Hoover had motivation to basically cover things up just to protect the FBI in general. If what they say is true about Lee Oswald being an FBI informant, which there's a good bit of indication for. We have Wagner Carr with his informant number. I forget exactly what it was, but we have Oswald asking for the FBI after he was arrested in New Orleans. Yep, and we have him visiting the FBI in Dallas.
Yeah, November 9th, 13 days before the assassination, and he drops off an apparent note to James Hosty, the FBI agent in Dallas, and then a couple days after the assassination, Hosty destroys the note of what Oswald left to him. And we don't know anything what that note said. Now, Hosty has claimed, and others in the FBI have claimed, that it was a threat to blow up the Dallas headquarters of the FBI. If so, what are you destroying it for? Then you say, look, this guy did have the violence. This guy was angry. That provides more ammo for the lone nut argument. But no, they go off and they destroy it. I believe he flushed it down a toilet or burned it or something.
Or both.
They didn't want whoever it was didn't want someone to know what that note said.
Right. So if Oswald had ties to the FBI, that would be motivation enough alone for Hoover to, start covering things up.
They want to cover it up. They don't want anyone to know about it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to the Dallas Police Department as facilitators, which I tend to agree with, I would say. They're at least instrumental in being bumbling detectives when it comes to investigating things there. And, of course... They
turned into the Keystone Cops.
Yeah. And of course, being very, very lax with their prisoner transfer security. But, as far as beforehand, I mean, you can see cops placed on the overhead triple overpass there. I mean, they did have cops in different places. They did respond relatively quickly. But who's to say? I mean, there's a lot going on. Even Jesse Curry said later that they just couldn't put Oswald up in that 6th floor window with a rifle in his hand.
No, they never did that. And just by the way they went through and pretty much destroyed the crime scene from whatever. I mean, there's still debates on what rifle was found on the 6th floor, whether it was a Carcano, whether it was a Mauser. There's debates on how many shells were found at the door. The chain of evidence for much of the most important evidence just gets destroyed. Once you destroy the chain of evidence once you destroy it, it's almost invalid because you can't tell what's what.
Yeah, and I would also put onto him
different times for different pieces of evidence being logged in, and then you've got stuff that goes missing, and it just was a horribly scrambled, horribly run investigation.
Yeah, from start to finish, and I also have to fault them too for not recording Oswald's interrogation audio.
Right.
The
only thing we have are those scrambled up notes from Will Fritz, which has really done us more harm than good because you can't make sense of them anyways. And now all you got are people's interpretations of them. And that just leads into more confusion.
Yeah, and an interesting thing, I think it was in Jim Marr's Crossfire, that the Dallas police did have an audio recording system in place for interrogations, and that either they chose not to use it or they did use it, and we will never, ever, ever hear that audio because it is buried.
They didn't like what they heard, and they don't want anyone else to hear it, so they destroy it.
I'm sure it was destroyed or locked away deep somewhere if that did occur. But like you said, all we have is these notes from Hosty, Fritz, Holmes, a couple other people. They're very discombobulated, disjointed, and I don't think they asked the right questions the right way.
Not.
They just bumbled the whole thing from start to finish, like you said.
Yeah. And most of the interrogation probably would not have been admissible anyways because Oswald never was given a lawyer.
That's a good point, too.
That's a fundamental right.
Yeah.
So most of what he said probably would have been thrown out if it had gotten to court, because without a lawyer, it's not valid.
Yep, that's a very, very good point. And also, I think they didn't do a very good job when it comes to questioning witnesses. It was just, tell us what you saw, or here, write this affidavit and sign it. They weren't really questioned,
No, tell us what you saw, thank you, goodbye. They didn't ask questions or anything.
Yeah.
And half the witnesses, they ignored a bunch of witnesses that they should have talked to.
Yeah, that's true, too. So the FBI. All right, let's get to Mr. Cliff Carter, LBJ's aide, whom Jim Fetzer says coordinated everything in Dallas as far as the motorcade, setting up the assassins and all this other nonsense.
Okay, well, Cliff Carter was one of the right-hand guys for LBJ. He was allegedly, like you said, by Fetzer, arranged to basically arranged everything. He was, I guess, LBJ's point man in Texas. But, I mean, I don't know where they get all of this. I mean, what are they basing that on? Has anyone ever said that, or is this just something that they're making up because he was a close associate of LBJ? I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, well, once again, the proof is lacking, as far as documents and that's. I mean,
and this again is something that I think also Billy Sol Estes, who we could probably talk about more a little bit later, claimed. But as we know, Billy Sol Estes is not exactly a silver dollar blue chip source. He's got a lot of problems with his credibility. Problems that he admits to himself.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much told the jury in that trial that they shouldn't listen to a word he says because he was a pathological liar.
He's a pathological liar and con man.
Yeah, and most of this stuff, I think, with LBJ stems from Billy Sol Estes, really.
Well, that's where a lot of these claims came from, because he was trying to cut a deal for immunity because he was up on other charges, and he goes on the stand under oath in 1984 and basically testifies that, or goes under oath and swears that Johnson engineered JFK's assassination, plus I believe it was 6 other murders. And basically he said that Mac Wallace was the trigger man. I know we're going to talk a little bit about Mac Wallace in a little bit. But he goes on the stand, and before he says all this, he tells the jury, look, I'm a pathological liar, I'm a con man, I'm basically not to be believed. And then he goes off and spins his tail. Well, what are we supposed to take from that?
I don't know.
He goes on to spin his tail after saying how unreliable he is.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty hard to pin things on dead men, Charles,
Right.
When they aren't here to defend themselves. But since you mentioned Mr. Mac Wallace, let's go ahead and talk about old Mac for a minute. Now, a lot of what they like to point to when it comes to Mac Wallace is, of course, the fingerprint in the 6th floor, the unidentified fingerprint in the 6th floor. And
well, that's their so-called smoking gun.
Yeah. Yeah, why don't you address that a little bit?
All right, well, after the search of the Texas School Book Depository, they did fingerprinting, and they found, several prints, some from Oswald, some from other employees of the Texas School Book Depository, but there was one print that they could not identify, one single, lonely, solitary fingerprint that was unidentified. And it went unidentified for many, many years. And then I guess it would have been around the mid to late 90s. There was a fingerprint examiner, a guy by the name of Nathan Darby, that did a study of the fingerprint. And he comes up and deciphers the fingerprint belonged to Mac Wallace, who many have titled LBJ's personal hitman. So at that point, people jumped through hula hoops saying, "Oh, we've got the Kennedy case solved. Mac Wallace was the hitman, and LBJ was the mastermind." And it kind of went from there real quickly. But once you start looking at Nathan Darby and his investigation into the fingerprint, it may not be quite as reliable as what you would first think. I know that there's been a lot of people out there, Walt Brown being one of them, I think Bar McClellan, Roger Stone, of course, Fetzer, have kind of, put all their eggs in the Nathan Darby basket and proving that Mac Wallace was the shooter. At the time of his study, Nathan Darby was, I believe, in his mid-80s.
Yeah.
He had not been certified for many, many years. His certification had run out many years before that. And he was working off of a photocopy. Not a picture, a photocopy. Now, what happens when you take a photocopy of a picture?
The ink bleeds.
It degrades the quality of the picture.
Yeah.
That's just common sense. So you've got basically what you have is a guy in his mid-80s trying to make a positive identification from a photocopy of a fingerprint.
By sight.
By sight. I can't take that seriously.
No, me either. If he hadn't kept up his certification, because it's like any other profession that requires you to be certified, such as teachers and nurses and doctors. If you're not up to speed on the latest techniques of your craft, you're not going to be as accurate. No. And the computers that they had back in the mid 90s, if he used a computer, just didn't have the capability that we do now.
No. Technology is always evolving. And of course, as a lot of people may know, Joan Mellon is now working on a new book based a lot on the Mac Wallace fingerprint. And in recent interviews, she has said that she has had another examiner who is apparently an officer of the organization that certifies latent print examiners, and she's had him do a study, and he has come up with the conclusion that the print is not Mac Wallace's. And he's been using all of the latest 2014, 2015 technology, as opposed to Nathan Darby back in the late 90s going off of a fingerprint, or off of a photocopy.
Right, he's not using photocopies. He's using actual photos from the archives of this print.
Right.
Along with crystal clear.
This person also did that Nathan Darby didn't do is he used a fingerprint from Mac Wallace that was a known fingerprint that was taken off of him previously, as well as a fingerprint from his naval records.
Right.
So she compared the three prints. So the print on the 6th floor, the naval record prints, and the third print, which was one that was taken off of Mac Wallace previously before too. The naval record print and the other Mac Wallace print matched. The one on the 6th floor didn't match either of the other ones.
Right, and people just don't understand. They don't get this through their heads. They still...
No. They still want to cling to Nathan Darby's identification and say, oh, well, he was a long-time noted fingerprint analyst. Well, that's all well and good, but if you're not using up-to-date technology and you're going off of a photocopy, I'm sorry, that doesn't pass as good evidence. And the other thing is they've never been able to produce one other fingerprint expert that backs up Mac Wallace's, or that backs up Nathan Darby's claim. They're going Nathan Darby, a guy in his mid-80s, and that's their gold standard for evidence.
Well, they did have another guy that substantiated it, but you know what, Charles? He retracted it a day later.
Right.
because he didn't want his reputation to be
24 hours later, he
tarnished.
said, no, I was wrong.
Yep.
So why do you still? But these people still cling to it, like they're like. I don't know why. I mean, evolve with the evidence. Don't just cling to it and just stay. Once it seems to fit your conclusion, you stay solid, and then you don't evolve. You don't take another look at it. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and the guy that retracted, he's when you're in the fingerprint identification business, one wrong identification can kill your reputation. I mean,
it'll destroy your career.
Yeah, and your credibility. And he had second thoughts very quickly about that print and about who had did it and how they did it, and what they had to work with. So he retracted very, very quickly, and hopefully, when Joan Mellon's book comes out, and she said it is at the publishers, she's done with it. It's just waiting to print. So hopefully it'll be out sometime this year, and we can put this Mac Wallace fingerprint nonsense to bed once and for good.
Oh, that would be nice, because we spent far too much time talking and debating it.
Oh, no doubt. And another thing with Wallace that they like to point out with that they say that he was LBJ's personal hitman. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's the evidence of this? Okay, we know he committed one murder. Okay, he was tried for it, and he was acquitted. Okay, but that murder of Kinzer. Okay, the guy was sleeping with Mac Wallace's wife. Okay, and he rolled up in the golf club, broad daylight, and shot him and killed him. It's called a crime of passion. Okay, it's called not being in your right state of mind when you find something out. That's why Mac Wallace got off from that murder, not because LBJ pulled strings from the judge. No. And just because he shot somebody in a crime of passion that was putting it to his wife, doesn't mean he committed 7 other murders.
No. And the main source for these 7 other murders is a guy, an admitted pathological liar and con man.
Exactly.
So take that for what it's worth.
Yep. And another thing that contributes to the Mac Wallace fairy tale is this whole Loy Factor Men on the Sixth Floor book that came out back in the mid-'90s. Yeah. Once again, there's no proof whatsoever of Loy Factor's story at all.
No, it's all a story with nothing to back it up.
Add it to the list of many.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of people trying really hard to, basically nail down LBJ as the mastermind. And they're trying over and over again, books, documents, and whatever. And really, when you look at all the hard evidence of LBJ being the mastermind, it's just not there. You can look. You can find a lot of speculation. You can find a lot of stories and a lot of claims, and you're not finding anything really solid that you can go to court with.
No, I mean,
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that LBJ was a bastard, a despicable.
He was not a good guy. He was an idiot.
A despicable human being. I could go on and on about what a piece of shit he was, but just because he was that kind of person doesn't make him a murderer.
No. And the thing is, a lot of people claim that LBJ was this ruthless political force that would stop at nothing to gain power. But that's not entirely true. And one of the things, if you look at some of the key points of Johnson's career, you'll find that he's not always the ruthless political. I mean, take the 1960 presidential
primary.
Johnson refused to enter any primaries. Johnson tried to win it all in the back rooms. He wasn't the big political fighter that a lot of people made him out to be. And you look at 1968, when he was the sitting president, who normally sitting presidents have a huge advantage to get renominated, as soon as the heat started going on him, he got out. He ducked out. Once McCarthy was giving him a run, and once Kennedy entered the race, he didn't want to fight. They talk about him being this ruthless political operative, this ruthless political, that'll take anything to win, but as soon as the heat gets on him, he ducks out. And, he was a bad guy. He was not a good guy, and he associated himself with a lot of different, political, bad people. But you still can't make that leap automatically from there to he organized the Kennedy assassination. That's just too big of a leap of faith without, concrete evidence to back it up.
Yeah, and another thing people like to point to is that, the fact that he was wrapped up in this whole Billy So Estes scandal, and he was
Bobby Baker.
Yeah, and he was probably going to be indicted in all this mess.
He's going to be indicted and possibly thrown out of office.
Right.
And there were already rumors swirling that Kennedy was going to drop him from the ticket in '64.
Right, but is that motivation enough?
No, any way of proof that he organized Kennedy's assassination.
No, and there's no guarantee that if he was to become president, they wouldn't still go after his ass. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So what difference does it make whether he's vice president or president? If the shit's going to hit the fan, it's going to hit it.
You commit a crime. It doesn't matter what your job is.
Exactly. But, I guess Life magazine chose not to run with the story, and it went by the wayside because, they didn't want to assassinate 2 presidents in 1 week.
Right.
All right, well, let's get into. I did pull some audio from Fetzer's show, and we're gonna listen to a little bit of it, and then we can comment on it. Okay?
All right.
Now this we're gonna start getting into some Madeline Brown here, and for everybody that doesn't know the Madeline Brown story, I'll put it in a nutshell real quick for you. She claims to be Lyndon Johnson's mistress. For many, many years. She claims to have bore him a son, Stephen, in 1950. She claims that she was at a party held at Clint Murchison's house, among many other notables like Richard Nixon and Hoover and LBJ, where LBJ came out of this boardroom and said, after tomorrow, I'm not going to have to worry about those goddamn Kennedy boys any longer. And then she claims she met him again on New Year's Eve of '63 at the Driscoll Hotel, where she confronted him and said, people said that, you're the one that had these people killed. And he told her no, the CIA and the oil boys wanted Kennedy dead. And on through the years, there's many, 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 many things, and we'll get into it, but she's a vital figure for the whole LBJ did it crowd, as we'll find out here shortly. Now the first clip I have here is regarding her son Stephen. Okay, so let's see if this works, because I've never done this before. So here we go. Clip. Okay, now that clip was regarding her son Stephen, who actually brought a lawsuit against LBJ to prove that he was his son, that he didn't show up for, consequently. And that's Fetzer claiming that the Navy kidnapped Stephen so he couldn't make it to the trial. If you can believe that one. Which,
okay, well, show me the evidence of it.
Exactly. Where is the proof?
Has the Stephen guy himself even claimed it?
Apparently.
Even if he did, so what? Again, this is part of the problem history. I'm not a big fan of his. But Fetzer is well known for throwing out all of these claims and really having nothing to back it up. He just makes the claims and lets it stand on its own. But the Navy kidnapped him, so he couldn't appear in court.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Sure.
Because he supposedly has had over 100 conversations with Madeline Brown.
Uh-huh.
Where are they?
Yeah, exactly.
And even the one he claims he claims he's on a JFK Lancer DVD, I think from 97 or 98, that he had a sit-down interview with Madeline Brown. But then he said he was watching the DVD and tried to find it and it wasn't on there. So,
right.
Who the hell knows?
Yeah, of course.
Now, this next clip is pertains to the Murchison party.
Oh, boy.
Here we go.
Evening. Unbeknownst to Madeline, Lyndon showed up, and these heavy hitters disappeared into a boardroom where they had a meeting that lasted 15 or 20 minutes in duration. And when it broke up, Lyndon strode toward Madeline. She expected he was going to whisper sweet nothings in her ear. Instead, as the next slide suggests, this diagram, he said to her that after tomorrow he was not going to have to put up with embarrassment from those Kennedy boys any longer. That's not a threat, that is a promise. This story has become very well known, and indeed Madeline told me Lyndon actually called her the following day before the motorcade took place and repeated the same message, that he wasn't going to be embarrassed by those Kennedy boys, and he referred to them in a derogatory fashion. Again, reiterating that was not a threat, that was a promise.
Uh-huh.
Now, concerning the Murchison party, okay? Now, if these heavy hitters, as he calls them, I mean, we're talking about Nixon, we're talking about, Hoover, who else was supposed to be there?
Johnson.
Yeah.
Connolly.
The oil men, yeah. Now,
there are so many problems with this Murchison party story. First of all, in original interviews with Madeline Brown, there are interviews with her early on when she came to the public that she never even mentions the party story. In fact, I have a documentary. It's called Beyond JFK, The Question of Conspiracy. It was sort of a companion piece that went with Oliver Stone's JFK. In fact, on some deluxe editions of the DVD, the documentary comes with it.
Yep.
It features a fairly lengthy interview with Madeline Brown. At no time during that interview does she ever mention any party at Clint Murchison's house or ever being with LBJ the night before the assassination. Don't you think that would be the first thing she would bring up in any interview?
Yeah, you think so.
At any time?
Yeah, and I think her list grows as well over the years.
Yeah, well, that's the next thing I was going to say. Then when the party story first came out, the number of people at the party would fluctuate. And I had just recently had an email exchange with Walt Brown, who, the longtime researcher, written many books on the assassination, who interviewed Madeline Brown on more than one occasion. The first time he interviewed her, there was 6 people at this so-called party. The last time he interviewed her, there was over 40 people at the party. The first time he interviewed her, she never mentioned John Connolly being at the party. The last time he did, she said that John Connolly was there. He questioned her about that. So she said, well, I had to keep Connolly's presence at the party a secret. Well, but you could tell that LBJ was at the party, but Connolly was a no-no?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. When you see this, and the description of the party keeps changing, the guests keep changing, the number of people there keeps changing, you got to start thinking, well, story. And then you got to start asking yourself, well, were all the people that were said to be at this party, were they there? Well, the time she says that LBJ arrived at this party, he's documented as being in Fort Worth, checking in at the Hotel Texas at 11:50 because he had been with JFK at the Houston Coliseum at a dinner speech that night. They traveled to Fort Worth to stay at the Hotel Texas, and they didn't get there until just before midnight.
Right.
And he was photographed around midnight in the lobby of the Hotel Texas and was never seen by anybody to leave the hotel that night. Lyndon Johnson's a pretty recognizable face, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. He was over 6 feet tall. I think if he's leaving, people are going to notice him leaving a hotel.
Yeah, and I'm sure he would have been surrounded by security and Secret Service.
Of course. But they claim that he just nonchalantly, discreetly slipped out of the hotel.
Yeah.
When you're vice president of the United States, you don't nonchalantly, discreetly slip out of anywhere.
No.
It just doesn't happen.
No, because I'm sure there would have been press there camping out. There would have been hotel employees everywhere.
Right. Someone's going to see him leaving, but yet not one person has ever come forward to say, yeah, I saw him leave the hotel.
Right.
And she claims that Richard Nixon was there. Well, Richard Nixon was documented in, he was in Dallas. I believe he was there for, I think it was like the Pepsi Bottlers Convention or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was at a show being put on by an actor by the name of Robert Clary, who was in the TV show Hogan's Heroes. And he was seen by Robert Clary, who was on stage up front, sitting at a table with the actress Joan Crawford. And they were there till at least 11 o'clock that night at this show there. So was Richard Nixon even there? And then she claims Hoover was there. And in various versions of the stories, she claims that the party was for J. Edgar Hoover. I don't know if she has any evidence to back that up. But Hoover was in Washington the night before the assassination.
Yeah.
So all of these people that she's claiming was at this, quote, party, they're somewhere else, and they're documented as being somewhere else.
Yeah, and here's another problem I have with that, Charles, that if you're going to have this meeting, okay, of these big swinging dicks, and they're going to, make the final plans for this assassination, are they really going to be worried enough to have some females around that? You know what I'm saying? Why the hell would Madeline Brown or any other woman or be at this party? I mean,
yeah,
I would think it'd be a
quote secret meeting to make the final preparations for an assassination. Are they just going to have random people hanging out there?
Oh, they got somebody serving hors d'oeuvres
and stuff like that. It's just foolish to think of that.
Yeah, they got somebody bartending. They got somebody serving hors d'oeuvres and waiters and waitresses and maids and. I mean, that it just wouldn't happen like that.
But we haven't even come to the biggest problem with the party yet. There's a real big problem that trumps everything else.
What's that?
The house that Clint Murchison, or that Madeline Brown says the party was held at, owned by Clint Murchison? Well, I'm sorry, but there are Dallas real estate records. Clint Murchison sold that house in 1959. So I guess he went back to his old house to throw a party.
A secret party.
A secret party. Maybe the new owners didn't even know. They're all huddled up down there in a billiard room making plans while they're up there sleeping. I don't know. The party, you look into this party and this is just problem after problem after problem.
Yeah.
And really, is anybody else, all of these, 6 to 40 people that were at this party, ever come forward and said, yeah, I was there? Nobody else has mentioned it other than Madeline Brown.
Yeah, because fortunately, Charles, they're all dead by the time she came out with the story.
Madeline Brown also claims that the party was written about by like an entertainment gossip columnist in the Dallas Morning News. There's no record of it.
Nope.
Nope.
And even if there was
all of these claims they're just fallen by the wayside. There's nothing to back any of it up.
No.
It's just Madeline Brown making claims where she changes story after story.
Right, and it's quite possible, that there was, or if there was a party, that it was just a party, and that a lot of these people that she claims were there weren't there. Because how these well-to-do folks, like to get together and all this happy nonsense, but on a Thursday night
in the middle of November, they're all getting together, having this big soiree, and then a group of people go into some room and plan an assassination.
Yeah.
It just sounds ridiculous.
It does. But like I said, you wouldn't, but people out there would be surprised at how many people rely on all this information to base that LBJ was, behind the assassination.
Well, part of the problem is people just like stuff that sounds good. They don't do any critical thinking, and they don't do any research into it. They just say, oh, well, this sounds good. It sounds like it's something I could buy into, so let's go with it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make any sense.
No.
You just go in, you've got to look into this and say, well, is this person telling the truth, or is this person just making up tall tales?
Yeah, what it does for people,
and more often than not, a lot of these people that are claiming with these bombshell revelations have nothing to back up their story.
No, and what it does is it makes sense on the surface, but as soon as you peel back even one layer, it just falls apart.
Yeah, and once you find one problem, evidently others seem to pop up.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next clip. I think we touched on this earlier. We'll see if he has anything else to say about it here. Fetzer again. Here we go.
Our story so very well for JFK Lancer at the conference held in Dallas in 1998. They pulled up two big chairs, very comfortable, and in about 30 minutes, we went through Madeline's entire story in considerable detail. I sought to obtain a copy of that. Here's what you can obtain on a DVD from JFK Lancer, and it mentions right on it, Madeline Brown, Dallas before November 22nd with me, but when I tried to play it, that interview was missing. I suspect it's because of what happened at the Driscoll Hotel on New Year's Eve, 6 weeks after the assassination. Here's the next slide is actually from the part 9 of The Men Who Killed Kennedy, produced by Nigel Turner. But the more important than what he said to Madeline on the occasion at the Murchisons is what she asked him at the Driscoll Hotel, because she explained to me that she confronted him with rumors that were rampant in Dallas at the time that he'd been involved, since no one stood to gain more personally, that Lyndon blew up at her and told her the oil boys of the CIA had decided that Jack had to be taken out. That, to me, is by far the most important information we ever received from Madeline Brown, and therefore I am quite stunned that when she would be interviewed several years later, as the next slide shows, by John Williams, look what it says that Madeline's talking about. He asks, after the assassination, did you get to see Lyndon much at all after that? Madeline, I didn't see him until New Year's when he became president, and I went to the Driscoll Hotel on New Year's, and that's when he told me, and Williams interrupts, and then you pretty much didn't see him? Madeline, I did see him. I saw him pretty often if he came.
Now, basically, what he's saying there, Charles, is there's some cover up in play about Madeline's story that they don't want to get out. Even going so far as to accuse this John Williams guy of purposely not following up on her most important point of the story.
Yeah, and this is a typical Fetzer thing, that if somebody isn't 100% agreeing with them, then they're somehow part of a cover-up or somehow trying to hide the truth.
Yeah.
And this is typical of Fetzer. And it just gets annoying sometimes, because most researchers that are interested in, having a discussion and finding out ideas will keep an open mind. And even if you disagree with somebody, they will, you can at least treat people with respect and say, okay, well, we agree to disagree on this point. But with Fetzer, if you're not right 100% on the same page with him, he just blacklists you.
Yeah.
Leno Sanik, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of course, from Black Op Radio. He used to have Fetzer on as a regular guest, and he would let Fetzer, get away with making all of these different claims and so on. And I was talking with him one day, and he said that Fetzer had actually come into town, and they got together for dinner one night and were discussing the Kennedy assassination. And Fetzer was going on and on about Oswald in the doorway and so on. And Len told him, you know what, I don't agree with you there. I don't think it was Oswald in the doorway. At that point, Fetzer turned on Len. He started, calling him a cover-up artist. I think he even went as far to call him a Mossad agent.
Oh.
And then on his podcast, he would play clips from Len's show and critique him and say how he was covering up the truth. And this is, again, what Fetzer is doing here, because he says that he didn't go into the Madeline Brown story very much, and this John Williams was covering, basically covering up, and that he's trying to prevent the story from coming out. It's a typical Fetzer tool. That's why so many people get annoyed with him. I'm not trying to really make this into a Jim Fetzer bashing, but I'm sorry, it really annoys me. He's done it to so many people. He did it to me once. He's done it to several other people, and it really annoys me because his actions really help prevent, good research from going on, because he starts attacking people, and then people ultimately have to go and defend themselves from the nonsense that he's creating. And he's doing it here with this John Williams guy in relation to the Madeline Brown story.
Right, and claiming that the reason that his interview's not on the Lancer DVD is part of that whole conspiracy to...
Yeah, so now the Lancer people are all part of the cover-up.
Oh.
It just gets ridiculous. And I might add, he's not the only one that does it. There are several people, if you're in the Facebook groups or any of the discussion groups, that take the same tactics. And normally, the people that do it, you can trace back to a relationship with Fetzer.
Yep, the Oswald Innocence Campaign.
Oh.
And we're talking about people like Richard Hook, Ralph St. K, Richard Sharnon. All these nasty guys that you cannot disagree with at all.
No, because once you disagree with them, they're going to be right on you. And it happens repeatedly. I know a number of good researchers. Trish Fleming, Zachary Gendreau, Carmine Savastano, who you've had on recently, Greg Parker, all of these different guys on there, and they have all had the same treatment from these guys repeatedly.
Yeah, and they're not researchers. I mean,
no, they're not. They're just peddling stories.
Yeah, I mean that when Ralph St. K first brought up this Oswald in the doorway nonsense, he said it was because he was a chiropractor and he could see that by the way he was standing in the doorway that it wasn't Oswald, or I mean it wasn't Lovelady, that it really was Oswald by the way his clothes fit.
What?
That was the genesis of the whole thing.
Yeah. Richard Hook does this photo analysis stuff, and I've asked Richard Hook on probably a dozen occasions compromising photographs. He has never answered me.
Because he doesn't have any.
He doesn't.
You know, it's pretty.
And then you get Richard Chardon with his statistical odds. But he never really explains what they're based on, and there's no validity to them. They're just random numbers that seem to sound good to him. I don't know. I tried to look at some of his articles. None of them made sense.
Yeah, I mean, and
if you even question them, you don't even have to necessarily disagree with them. If you question them and ask, well, how did you arrive at that? They get hostile immediately.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a rube. They're all rubes. They all believe the LBJ nonsense. They all believe Judith Very Baker. They all believe George Bush was there, and on and on and on.
That's another thing we should touch on, because that's something we haven't touched on yet either, and that's just as ridiculous.
Oh, we'll get there. Let me hurry up and play this clip about Bush.
Okay.
Here we go.
In 1977, where E. Howard Hunt was relating to his son St. John the chain of command in relation to the assassination, which went from Lyndon Johnson to Court Meyer, who was in charge of covert ops for the CIA at the time, to David Ackley Phillips, who was in charge of Western Hemisphere for the CIA, to William Harvey, who oversaw assassinations being conducted by the agency, to David Sanchez Morales, and below them, the mechanics and the supervisors, including George H.W. Bush and Edward Lansdale. And there's a marvelous article about the role of George H.W. Bush published in Veterans Day by Richard Hook entitled, Did George H.W. Bush supervise a JFK hit team? To which the answer appears to be emphatically yes.
Based on what?
Based on blurry images that Richard Hook has drawn on.
And this goes right back to what we were just talking about. Misidentification, wanting something to be true based on really sketchy evidence. So the whole George Bush thing is, of course, a lot of people may or may not know, but there is this photograph of this guy standing right in front of the Texas School Book Depository. And the guy's kind of standing in shadows, and he's standing kind of sideways to the camera. And he's just standing there. He's not doing anything really. He's just standing there in front of the building. And people have identified the guy as George Bush. And they try to claim, well, it's because the hairline matches. Which it doesn't. But based on that one picture alone and really nothing else, well, the other thing they bring up, which is a little strange, I do agree, but it's not proof of anything, is that George Bush said he couldn't remember where he was when JFK was assassinated. Based on those two things, they've tried to now make the leap of faith that says that George Bush was the coordinator of a hit team? Huh?
Yeah. Well, that photo you're talking about, the William Allen photo in front of the Texas School Book Depository, you know, they say just because of his hairline, the way he stands with what a lot of people stand with their hands in their pockets. A lot of people wear suits.
Of course they do.
And a lot of people wore their hair like that back in the 60s. Okay.
Yeah, that was common.
Yeah. It's called the comb over. You know what I'm saying? We had a very distinct part. And it was, Brill cream down and whatnot. It was a very popular style of police officers as well as businessmen. But when you look a little closer at that photo, the hair, like you said, the hairline doesn't match. The nose doesn't match. The chin doesn't match. And when you examine a couple other of William Allen's photos from that day, I do believe we actually get a front view of the George Bush figure.
I'm looking at it right now, and it is not George Bush.
Yeah, and you'll say, oh, well, that's not the same guy. Well, the texture, he's wearing a very distinctive suit that has a very distinctive texture pattern.
Texture, kind of checkered pattern. He's got the same slim tie. He's got the same belt.
Yep.
It's the same guy, and he's standing in exactly the same spot.
Yep. And
it's taken by the same photographer.
Yeah.
But yet it's not George Bush. Come on. Or I mean, it's not the same guy. Come on. It is not George Bush. It's clearly not George Bush.
It's clearly not George Bush. And I found that guy in I think 3 different Allen photos from that day. And one time I got him with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Now, George Bush never smoked. So, I mean, you know, if people would just do a little bit of digging, you know, just to corroborate or substantiate claims, they would find the same thing. You know, just go look at, you know, William Allen was there on the scene. He didn't just take one photograph that day. He took many. And people aren't statues. They do move. And, you know, he was taking a lot of photos of police activity in front of the Texas School Book Depository that day, as well as other things. But this guy, whoever it is, was most likely a detective.
Yeah. And to make it even worse is that Richard Hook has come out with an article claiming not only that George Bush Sr. was there, he's also made the claim that George W. Bush was there.
Yeah, because
George W. Bush at the time was 17 years old. You gotta be kidding.
I know.
And it's based on some kid standing out there. He has a slight resemblance to George W. Bush. I don't think it's very strong. He has a very slight resemblance. But he's made the conclusion that it's George W. Bush and that George W. Bush was involved. Complete nonsense.
Yeah, and another part of that claim is of course, what related to the Auction 6 photograph that houses the famous doorway image. What Richard Hook has done is, of course, the Dow Tex building is in the background of that photo.
Right.
And he's alleging that George W. Bush can be seen in one of the windows with a shooter. And I'm sorry, but I just don't see it, Charles.
No, you don't see it, Rob, because it's not there. They're making stuff up as they go almost. It's getting ridiculous.
It's pareidolia at its best. You know, I mean, first you had Badge Man, and now we have George Bush and his hairline and another guy and a gun and all this other stuff in a blurry image that he's drawn colors on and outlines and photoshopped, and he calls it evidence.
If this was a murder mystery novel, no one would buy it because it would seem too ridiculous to people, and yet they're claiming this is real life. Just complete. It annoys me because there's so many other researchers out there that are doing good research into stuff. I mentioned a bunch of them earlier, and yet these guys are going around trying to bully people into believing they're crap.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating sometimes because these guys are such, it just drives me crazy.
And we've never had any solid proof, Charles, that George Bush was ever in the CIA other than 1 year as a civilian head of it in the 70s.
1 year, but do we have any other proof that he was an agent?
Well, they like to point out...
That's another thing people point to. They're like, well, look at what he named one of his boats. I think it was like Zapata or something like that.
Yeah, and the Barbara.
And that's supposed to be clues that he was part of the CIA.
Well, they also like to point out to that Hoover document that says George Bush of the Central Intelligence Agency, blah, 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 blah. Have you seen that document?
I have seen that document.
How the hell would Hoover know who is a CIA agent back then?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I question its authenticity. Hoover doesn't know who all the CIA agents would be. How would he know that?
No, it's not like the CIA and the FBI had a good working relationship back then.
No, a lot of the times they butted heads constantly.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't know who their secret assets were. I mean,
the CIA's not going to share info with Hoover.
No, especially not on their agents.
No. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's why I think that's a bogus document, because there's no way Hoover's going to know who that Bush is part of the CIA. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that George Bush is a great guy either. I mean, I'd put him on par with LBJ as far as being an evil bastard.
Well, sure, he's not a good guy either, but just because someone's not a good guy doesn't mean they were part of killing Kennedy.
No. I mean, that's just
ludicrous.
It's ridiculous on its face.
Right.
So now let's get back.
We can talk for hours about these guys.
I know.
We still just scratch the surface.
And here's another one of Madeleine Brown's assertions of proof. Supposedly, LBJ, upon his death, left some kind of documentation that she and her son Stephen would be taken care of for the rest of her life. So let me find this clip. Here we go.
Nigel, they located, for example, the chauffeur who had driven Richard Nixon out to the Ferguson estate, the chef who had prepared the hors d'oeuvres, and you will see that Nigel was very favorably impressed by what Madeleine had to say. There's a rather fascinating story that goes with it that I will delay until I introduce that segment of the show. But here we have a very important letter from Jerome Ragsdale, Lyndon's attorney, written to Madeleine explaining how Lyndon had made accommodations for her and Stephen to be cared for the rest of their lives. That the documents and records pertaining thereto were the safe deposit box of a bank that Lyndon used in downtown Dallas, it may have been Austin, where astonishingly enough it would turn out that after Lyndon's death, that safety box was actually physically yanked out of the wall. I have no doubt it was at the direction of Ladybird, but they physically ripped the safety box that had all of Madeleine's documents included from the wall.
All right, Charles. So here we have the incredible.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at this. It's absurd.
We have the Incredible Hulk ripping out the safety deposit box.
Someone just walked in and ripped the safety deposit box out of a wall. Sure they did.
Yeah, where's the record of this? Where's the police report?
Is there a police report filed? Hey, somebody ripped this safe deposit box out of the wall?
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Is there anything to document this is a true story and not just some fairy tale? And they're trying to pass this off as credible evidence.
Yeah, it sounds to
got
me.
Nothing to support it.
Yeah, it sounds to me like somebody had asked for evidence from her at one point in time, and that was her story. Well, I had it in a safety deposit box. Yeah, but then some huge muscular guy came and ripped it out of the wall. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but any police report from the place saying that someone stole it or anything? If that were to happen, let's just take it. If someone goes into a post office and rips or whatever, and rips a safe deposit box out of a wall, that's going to be in the newspaper because that's such an offbeat, absurd story. There's going to be records of this.
Yeah, people talking about it.
Ever produced.
No.
This is not something that's just going to go unnoticed by people.
I know.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh at it because it's so ridiculous. And the people are trying to pass this off as some kind of evidence, and it's just crazy story after crazy story. And whenever you try and produce evidence, there's another excuse.
Yep, story after story after
story.
story.
Want to claim that this woman's stories is legit. Come on, wake up, people. This is absurd. This is nonsense.
Exactly. I mean, we have much more evidence to look at, real evidence in this case to look at, than this horse shit.
And the stories just get weirder and weirder as stories.
Yeah.
You honestly could, because there's that many. And then you take the discrepancies in the whole Mac Wallace thing. You take the discrepancies with the whole Billy Solestis. George, you could write 3 or 4 books on the problems with this stuff. It's time to get rid of this stuff and start looking at proper evidence. Stuff that actually leads somewhere. Stuff that has documentation. Not stories made up by any person that comes out of the woodwork and wants to claim stuff. Start paying attention to stuff you can actually prove. Something that's got tangible evidence to back it up. Not these ridiculous stories.
Yeah, man, these ridiculous
stories. You just end up on a wild goose chase. It's a waste of time. It's counterproductive, but people still do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to pay attention to them because you feel the need to correct them and not have other people get suckered into believing this crap.
Yeah, well, that's part of my problem is that people that are new to the case are gonna hear this and they're gonna say, "Wow, what a story!" But people who have done proper research are gonna realize that there's nothing to these stories. They're just fantasies. They're distractions. So you got to try and tell these people, look, don't follow this. This doesn't lead anywhere. And then you got the people trying to spin these tales, and then they get confrontational.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just gets absolutely frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, because
you know that there's good evidence out there, but way too often the bad evidence and the crap make its way in front of people. And you waste time trying to refute this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the exciting stuff. That's the high profile stuff. That's the love stories. That's the romantic
love story, the big party. They're not reality.
Not at all.
They're just stuff that sounds good on paper, but there's no proof to it.
Nope, I got some other clips.
You get these. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, I had some other clips on Mac Wallace, if you want to run through those real quick.
All right, let's go with those ones.
And before we do, I just want to explain to everybody that likes to attack Joan Mellon on this whole thing. At first, when Joan Mellon first heard the Mac Wallace story and the accusations and the fingerprint evidence and this and that, she was intrigued enough to want to write a book about Mac Wallace and expose him as being a killer.
Yeah, that was the original point of her book.
Yeah, I mean, she was on par, with the notion that Mac Wallace was an assassin, and in the course of writing her book and looking into him and looking into his past and actually not just relying on the word of Nathan Darby, actually taking it upon herself to hire another independent fingerprint analyst, one up to date, one certified. Different evidence has come about, and that altered the course of her book.
Yeah, she was doing that just to corroborate, just for independent corroboration, but it didn't come because it wasn't right.
Nope. All right, here we go. Mac Wallace.
However, as the next slide reflects, are the many deaths that were brought about by LBJ directing Malcolm Mac Wallace to perform assassinations, which included one of his own sister, Josefa, who turned out to be a bit of an alcoholic, talking too much about Lyndon's business. He didn't like that, so he shut her up permanently. Probably the most famous story, absent Mac Wallace's involvement in the assassination of JFK, was that of an agriculture inspector who had come down to determine whether or not Billy Sol had these vast cotton allotments on the basis of which he was using as collateral for huge loans from the Department of Agriculture, where Henry Marshall was found shot 5 times with a single-shot bolt-action rifle. His lungs were full of carbon monoxide. He'd been struck across the head to be rendered unconscious, and where in the Texas of the Times, the justice of the peace declared it to be a suicide.
Now, Charles, here's where I have a problem with people like Fetzer, and the problem is he has a voice, he has a radio show, he has a following, and when he says stuff like that, and he says it authoritatively, like it's, set in stone, that Mac Wallace was LBJ's personal hitman, and he even had his own sister killed, with absolutely no proof whatsoever of any of this shit. That bothers me, because I think he has a bigger responsibility than, if he's using the airwaves like he is to, purposely spread this misinformation and disinformation pertaining to the case. If he cares about it so much, it just pisses me off to hear him say so authoritatively that, certain what he calls facts of the case, but nothing's proven.
No, they're not facts at all. They're what he believes. But he passes them off as facts.
Yeah, and people new to the case...
He passes himself off as an authority, and that's not true either.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth?
And just the way he goes about it, he's not objective whatsoever. He doesn't give any objectivity to it. He says what he believes what he says, and he tries to make other people believe it.
Yep.
And yet, like you said, there's no proof of any of what he's saying. There's just stories.
Stories. Yep.
And most of the time you look into them, they're hogwash.
Yep. And like you said, the problem is, people believe them and they spread them like wildfire.
Yeah.
And hopefully today...
Because he's a university professor, he knows what he's talking about. Sure he does.
Oh my God, can you imagine how many minds he's poisoned throughout the years?
No kidding. And I mean, the thing is with Fetzer too, it's not just JFK. He's got wild, crazy theories about all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, Paul's dead.
You look at some of his claims about 9/11 and about laser beams coming down from outer space and blowing up the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Those were actual claims.
Yeah. And
He's
claims...
lately been on trying to prove that Paul McCartney is dead and was replaced with a double.
Yeah.
So this is what you're dealing with this guy.
Well, it's a clear pattern, Charles. I mean, you see with his JFK stuff, what he does, he takes other people's research and he latches onto it like his own, and he gets it out there and exploits it, and then he moves on. He just
tries to wave around the Murder in Daily Plaza book and tries to pass it on as his own. 90% of that is stuff written by other people.
Yeah, he edited it.
Yeah, he edited it.
He compiled it.
His stuff.
No, I mean, and his personal research I have never seen. I mean, he latches onto this Oswald in the Doorway crap from Ralph Sinkay. He latches onto the Judith Very Baker stuff, but that's her story. He just pushes other stuff.
Richard Hook, Richard Sharman, he latches onto all this stuff.
Yeah.
But in reality, what has he ever done for his own research? He doesn't. He uses other people's research and tries to make it his.
Yeah, he's a coattail rider.
Exactly.
And boy, I called him that one time and he did not like it. But it's true.
Well,
I mean, I'm not saying anything here that I wouldn't say to his face and haven't said to his face. So just to make that real clear.
Well, he was on our Facebook page, the jfk-assassination Research Bureau. We let him in. He started getting confrontational. He started insulting people, so we threw him out. So what does he do? He turns around and writes a unflattering, insulting article about us on our page and posts it on Veterans Today website.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's what the guy does.
Unbelievable.
If you're not with me, you're against me.
Exactly. All right, Charles, I think that's about it. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on today?
No, I think we've covered off quite a bit. Good stuff there. And, it's continuing to beat these guys, but and battle with them. But I think the more and more we get out there, and more we try and expose these people, then eventually they'll go away, and then the proper research can get done.
Yeah.
Because right now they're just providing a distraction for people.
Yeah, been doing a damn good job.
I think at times they do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because they like to be the center of attention.
Yep. Or worse. You know, they could be paid to do this stuff.
Oh, that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
Paid trolls to just muddy the waters.
Yep.
Because it's hard to believe that some of their claims they actually could possibly believe, because most of them are ridiculous.
Yeah, irrefutable.
So you gotta not listen to these guys, and if you hear a story, just do a little bit of research on it, because it doesn't take much. If a story is nonsense, it doesn't take much research to prove that really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, people have been trying to say that's Oswald in the doorway for 50 years, and nobody's proved it yet. So
it wasn't true then, and it's not true now.
No.
And it's never going to be true, no matter what they say.
Nope, and that's not George Bush and Dealey Plaza. And without any
there's no proof that Mac Wallace was on the 6th floor.
Nope. Without that fingerprint, everything falls apart.
Yes.
So people, do your own research. Don't you don't have to believe what me and Charles are telling you, but don't believe what these other guys are saying either.
No.
Do your own research, and you'll find the right answer.
Page.
Yeah. Stick to the documents, people.
Yep.
All right, Charles. Well, hopefully we'll open a couple eyeballs today and get people thinking, and hopefully have them do 180s here.
Just got to do our best. That's all we can do.
That's right. All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you coming back on the show.
Well, I'm glad you have me. Anytime you want, just give me. I'll be happy to come on.
Cool. All right, well, you hang on for me, Charles.
All right.
Everybody out there, please go check out my buddy Doug Campbell's podcast, The Dallas Action. He is back and he is podcasting. Go give him a listen. 22novembernetwork.wordpress.com, tlgpodcast.com for all your related links and items talked about on today's show. Once again, I thank Charles Cliff for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to doing it again, buddy. All righty, this is Rob Clark on the Lone Gunman Podcast. This sumbitch is in the can, up to the satellite, down directly to your ears, people. This is Rob Clark, out.